Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm Katie Starantino, the Director of Wellness Initiatives here at Friends Life Care. And we have a very popular presentation today that we're all looking forward to, brought to us from Team Vivo, who we have worked with in the past. If you have not watched the last webinar we did with them, The Science of Strength Training, I think many of you would really enjoy that, and that's on our website as well. We'll talk a little bit about Team Vivo and what they do. But you should know that next month they're offering us 3 free classes. So keep an eye on the newsletter. If you like what you hear today, you might want to try it out. But today's topic is about protein and aging. Before we get going, a few housekeeping items. You can use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Looks like 2 little bubbles that says Q&A. And we really encourage you to ask questions throughout. I want you to get the most of this. This is your time with our expert, so please ask questions as we go. And then again, on the bottom right, you'll see more with 3 dots. You can find closed captioning there, or you might even see 2 CCs that say show captions on the bottom without clicking more. But enable those captions if that's helpful to you. So enough of me rambling. I will introduce our speaker for protein and aging today. This webinar is presented by Jamie Rincker. She is a registered dietitian and the head of nutrition at Team Vivo. With a Master's of Science in Human Nutrition, Jamie brings a wealth of knowledge and expertise to the discussion on nutrition and its impact on the aging process. And Jamie, I'm going to hand it over to you now.
All right. Thank you so much, Katie. I want to thank everybody for signing up and your interest in this topic. I'm obviously very excited about it because I'm a dietitian and this is the field that I'm working in, but it's really fun for me to be able to talk with you about this, share my ideas, my reflections on where I feel that we are at with science and research and what we can kind of glean from that and apply to our everyday lives. So I'm going to say that it's sort of a caveat of like, I know that dietary recommendations and diets are a very exciting thing for a lot of people to talk about, but can also become sort of, we have a lot of strong opinions. Everybody has a lot of strong opinions. And what I want to say, first of all, is that you're the expert of your body and you're the expert of figuring out what your needs are. And I'm going to give you basic recommendations. I'm going to give you my opinion of what I've seen in research that I have worked on, and what I see in research that continues to come out, but then also what I see when I work with people one-on-one. Again, thanks for having me. My name is Jamie Rincker. I am a registered dietitian. I've been doing dietetic work for about the past 10 to 15 years. And I've developed areas of interest in nutrition for people over 50, perimenopause and menopausal nutrition. I do a lot of work in functional GI disorders, think like irritable bowel syndrome, that sort of thing. And then also I'm really interested in nutrition for neurodiverse people. So these are some of the specialties that I work in. And I want to state that I also approach my dietetic work in what we call in a weight inclusive and a weight neutral way. And you'll notice that I don't talk about expressing to explicitly try to lose weight to get to your strength goals or what you want to be doing. And there's a reason for that. It's not an accident. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that and why we want to be really focusing on the things that we can do and how we can nourish our bodies to make sure that we don't limit too much food and limit too much calorie and actually accidentally weaken ourselves. So that's sort of that's a little about me and how I approach dietetics. Okay, so basically I've got a few different specialty interests, but today I'm going to talk to you about one that's really important and really impacts the way that we're living day to day as our bodies are aging. And so that's what we're going to focus on today. Uh-oh, can you still hear me? I just heard a really big.
Yes, we can hear you.
Good. Okay. All right. So today we're going to talk about how dietary protein affects aging. And the overview for that is I'm going to talk about the roles and recommendations for dietary protein, why do we even care about dietary protein? What is it really doing for us? And how does that become even more important as our body is aging and changing? What's happening metabolically, what's happening in the actual tissues of our muscles, and then talking about how do we maintain and grow our muscles. So just kind of giving you what mine and the current status of research is recommending. And then I'll show you a couple example meals and a meal plan that could show you how to do what I'm talking about. Because it's not super complicated, but I feel like it's always really helpful to see some real life examples of how you could actually put a recommendation into play. And then I want to talk briefly about just kind of current research reports and looking at that combination of resistance exercise and diet and how to avoid strength plateaus. And then lastly, we'll finish out with talking a little bit about supplementing with protein, if that's something to consider, what are the benefits and what are the drawbacks there, and talking about product reviews and how you can try to find the best quality if that's a path for you. So what is protein? So just to take a very, very basic definition from the National Human Genome Research Institute, proteins are large, complex molecules that play many important roles in the body, and they're critical to most of the work that's done by cells and are required for the structure, function, and regulation of the body's tissues and organs. So it's a really complex structure. Our body has to do a few things with that complex structure to be able to break it down and then be able to use it. And then what it does is it rebuilds. It has sequences of combinations of amino acids to build and repair and maintain our tissues. There are essential and there are non-essential amino acids. The essential ones are the ones that we cannot make. We have to eat them, we have to consume them. And often restricted eating can lead to not getting enough of this and just kind of depleting the body. So that just reflects back to what I was saying in the intro about really being careful about how much you're getting of protein and not trying to over restrict with the idea of shrinking your body, because then it can kind of lead to more frailty. So we're going to focus really on what to do and not what to avoid so much today. So a lot of you probably know there's some typical changes that happen as we age. And I know that I don't need to tell you that our bodies change as we age in ways that can be challenging. So just really, really briefly, some of the changes that can be happening include if we are doing less physical activity than we did in younger years. That could be impacted by chronic illness. That could be impacted by the mobility that you have. We do lose muscle mass. That's highlighted in red because that's where we're going to spend a lot of time talking today. And so that distribution of our muscle mass to our fat mass actually goes in a direction that's not so helpful, where we increase our fat mass as we're reducing that muscle mass. And so that can impact our mobility and function. Our sensory functions also change. If you've noticed any changes in balance, or you're keeping an eye out for that. GI tract changes. So sometimes there can be malabsorption issues as we're aging, as those tissues change, or as your microbiome changes. And so that can impact the way that we are intaking our nutrition and how we're actually able to use it efficiently. Our bodies do become less efficient with holding onto fluid and electrolyte regulation. So that becomes, that's sort of a side note, but always very important to remember that you may have to start increasing the amount of liquids that you're taking in each day. And that can be kind of a hard thing to do for a lot of people. So don't feel bad if that's a hard thing for you, but something that is definitely worth focusing on. Our kidney function tends to change a bit and not do quite as well. And that can be connected to the way that we're absorbing protein, how we're using the protein. Hormone fluctuations can actually impact the way that we are able to use protein and build muscle. Think about insulin resistance. That's a hormone change that can really impact the way that we are building muscle. And then also our liver function slows. And all of this kind of plays into what we call anabolic resistance. And that's just resistance of the body to build the same amount and quality of muscle mass, muscle fibers that it did when it was a little bit younger. But there are things that we can do to help this out. Continue with me as we go down what can be happening in the body, and why it's really important for us to think about protein in our nutrition. So muscle atrophy is when we lose strength of our muscle. And that happens to almost everyone as we're aging, and really can start in your 30s, and really starts to escalate in the 60s and 70s. But some people will have faster loss of muscle, and also a loss of muscle, the number of fibers. And we define that as called sarcopenia. So that's a little bit different than typical muscle atrophy. It's a little more serious, it's something to know that a doctor can test for this. You can do something there. You can do a hand grip strength test. There are different things that your doctor could test you for, and you could get a baseline now and check to see if your strength is changing, to see if sarcopenia is something for you to be concerned about. And again, that just means that it's a faster progression of losing the function of our muscles. And so you can see here in this graph, in the 20s, 30 years, we have pretty strong muscle structure. And then as we get into our later decades, the muscle structure starts to, the black lines that are on here, get thinner and thinner. And then there are actually fewer of them too as we get older. And so this is it can really have a lot to do with genetics. We don't know exactly why some people experience sarcopenia and other people just experience sort of that typical muscle atrophy. But it's something to be looking out for. And one of the ways that I suggest people look out for it is that as you're getting into your 50s, 60s, and beyond, notice if you start to do sort of almost imperceptible changes about strength. So the best one I like to use as an example is when you're walking up and down stairs. And if you change from not having to use the railing to needing to do that, or just noticing that, oh, I'm touching that more, I'm using more for balance, that can be a start of a change of your balance and the strength of your muscles. But again, your providers can definitely take a look at that and talk to you about if that's something that you need to be focusing on. On the right here, we have two curious little figures here. Now, this is a CT scan of a thigh bone. This is the thigh bone right here, and this is the thigh and all that great thigh muscle in there. And the VL is the very lean muscle, and the BF is the body fat. And these are just the white kind of ripples that you see in here. So over time, what happens, this is the same person as this person ages, and this person is experiencing sarcopenia. And so the fat mass starts to actually infiltrate into the muscle fibers, which makes not only a weaker muscle, but it's not as quality of muscle. So it just kind of breaks that muscle down a little bit. So let's take a closer look at that, where you can really see the way that we actually change. And when you start adding resistance training, healthy diet, back in, you can actually reverse some of this and head back over to the really strong muscle. So this is not a static, this is not a situation where if you get to this place, you cannot get strong again. You completely can. Our bodies are still very resilient as we age. And there's lots of things that we can do to support our bodies and be strong and continue, even if sarcopenia is happening in your body. So I want to just talk about kind of real life again, and like how you might actually be experiencing that, and why it's really important to be aware of where your strength is at and make sure that you're doing things to maintain your strength and to build your muscles all through life. So up here is kind of our younger years, where we get our typical peak strength. This is going to be like a typical person, not an athlete. And so if someone is kind of just living a typical life. There's no major trauma to their body. There aren't major illnesses happening here. It's just going to be that easy, slow progression. But if we have trauma, if we have sarcopenia happening, you see this steeper decline right here. And once we get into this pink zone is where we're thinking about that threshold of low physical performance, when things start to get a lot harder. And then we drop into disability down here. And so again, the excellent truth about our bodies is that they're very resilient. And by supporting it, we can stay in this higher level and really just mitigate how serious this is over time. And I say that with knowing that there are some things that we can manage with our bodies and some things that we can't. Such as if we have cancer and we have cachexia or loss of muscle mass due to the cancer, you've done nothing wrong if you're trying to support your body, you do the best that you can. There are always caveats to these things, but in general, this is the way that our bodies age and the way that we can support our bodies to have really strong, vibrant lives as we age. And I'd like to kind of have people think at this point about, what do you want to be able to do? And this picture for me is kind of what I want to be able to do as I'm aging. I want to continue to be able to adventure and travel and hike and do things with my body that feel really good. And so that's sort of my motivation. Common answer would be, I want to be able to get up off the floor and play with my grandkids. And that's something we see a lot at Vivo that people are able to do. And obviously there are lots of different reasons to take care of your body, but trying to find where your motivation lies can be really helpful with this. So what's our recipe for success? So it really is a combination of resistance training or strength training, right? That stimulates muscle protein synthesis, in addition to having protein that's coming in through your diet that's going to support that strength training that you're doing. So the dietary protein just really helps to emphasize the strength that you can gain when you're doing the resistance exercise. It's hard. You cannot get the same result without the resistance exercise. You can't do it just with the nutrition. And I think that's important for me to state as a dietitian, because I want it to be very clear that the research continues to develop and seems to say that it's very important that we get resistance exercise in some way. And so whatever that means that your body is able to do, find that recipe for you of exercise that will work. And then let's talk more deeply about the particulars of nutrition that can help to support that. So resistance training plus protein intake can really stimulate our muscles to grow. And 20 to 40 grams of protein per meal, ideally 2 to 4 times a day. So what that really means is, like, each of your meals each day would have 30 grams of protein, and maybe a snack would also. But if you're not getting 30 grams of protein in any of your meals, and you can get it in one meal each day, and then maybe slowly build up over time, that's excellent. So find out where your baseline is at. And I'm going to talk about real examples of what 20 to 40 grams of protein can look like. And then the other piece of that is that the recommendation is that you would evenly distribute that protein throughout the day. And I'm going to show you why that's important. So I spent a good amount of time helping to run clinical research trials. If anybody came to the last Vivo talk with Dr. Katie Starr, she designed studies that looked at treating strength we did exercise training, and we did a somewhat elevated protein diet that would provide this 30 to 40 grams of protein per meal. And we looked to see, can that help people gain strength? And not only were we able to see that, one-on-one with people and looking at how their bodies were changing, this is supported by a number of different labs and researchers across the world. So that being said, this first graph here is showing you how typically we tend to eat protein throughout the day. So at breakfast, we usually have a little bit, 10 grams of protein would be like one egg and maybe like a piece of toast. Or maybe it could be a very small Greek yogurt. And then at lunch, we're having like around 15 grams of protein. Maybe that's like a half a turkey sandwich, or maybe it's a soup that has a little bit of protein in it. And then at dinner is where we get the majority of our protein. Just that's sort of the typical way that most of us have been eating. That's kind of the way that our culture has developed. So what's been found is that there is sort of this, for lack of a better word or picture, think of it as this, as a light switch that we can kind of turn on at around that 30 grams of protein mark in our bodies. It can stimulate muscle protein synthesis, which means it's going to stimulate your body to make muscle fibers, to make strong muscle, to put together those amino acids to build muscle, in addition to all the other wonderful things that protein is doing. It's, it's supporting all of your systems and all of your hormones and all of your tissues. But if we're thinking really about our muscle strength, this is where we can turn that light switch on 3 times a day. So you can see these humps here is somebody getting 30 grams of protein at breakfast, 30 grams at lunch, and then 30 grams at dinner. So they are turning the light switch on 1, 2, 3 times, whereas the person here is only hitting that threshold once in a day. So really, it's just about giving our bodies more, like multiple opportunities in a day to be able to really maximize the stimulation of protein synthesis and increase the healing of muscles if we're doing resistance exercise, and then also to build more muscle. So that's why we suggest that. But what does that look like in real life, right? So animal sources of protein, 4 ounces of cooked lean meat, fish, or poultry will give you about 30 grams of protein. It's like around 28 grams of protein, but if you're eating like that plus like some broccoli, you're definitely hitting the 30. So 3/4 of a cup of many Greek yogurts will give you 15 grams. So you could double that amount if you want to just hit the 30 and walk out the door. I find that to be a little bit hard. So instead, I will do something like having that Greek yogurt, but then adding in maybe some different seeds, like 3 tablespoons of hemp seeds is 10 grams of protein. So you could do that, or you could do just a combination of different kinds of seeds and grains on top of it, or you could have a side of eggs. 1 egg is 7 grams of protein. So I think that's important to think about, because sometimes we can sit down and have that like the 1 egg and a piece of toast and feel like, well, I've had a very protein hearty breakfast, but in reality, you're not getting to that 30 grams. And so though it's still, I mean, it's great that you're getting protein in your meal, if we're trying to hit that mark where we're trying to stimulate that muscle to grow, then you need to get more in that meal. And then the last one here is 1 ounce of cheese is 7 grams of protein. So that gives you a little perspective on some animal sources. And then here are 3 different examples of meals that could get you to that 30 grams. And I pulled these pictures from MyFitnessPal. If you go online, you can definitely easily link up to different recipes that easily give you the 30 grams of protein. It's definitely not, this is not like hidden knowledge. I'm not, shining the light on like finally, I'm going to tell you what to do. There's definitely information out there, and there are lots of recipes that can support you. But so first we've got a yogurt bowl. So they've got 2% plain Greek yogurt, 1 ounce of sliced almonds, and a half a cup of raspberries. This is giving you that amount of protein. And it's 360 calories. That is a good amount of energy, because we think of calories as energy, right? So it's giving you a good amount of energy. And it's also going to give you that protein that you need to really get your morning started well. For lunch, this person is having chicken and soba noodle salad with ginger dressing. So they're probably having 3 to 4 ounces of chicken breast here. You could definitely have chicken thigh too. And then there is some protein in the soba noodles as well. And then for dinner, they're having a nice pork loin with some roasted vegetables. So you can see this is not a day of restriction of I can't eat anything very tasty. I'm only, eating the carnivore diet. It's really just a small elevation of protein from what we are typically eating. And it's a small elevation from what the current standard is stated that we need, which is 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight. Well, the thing is that an 18-year-old boy and a 75-year-old woman have the same recommendation right now, but our needs are different. And so as we continue to do these studies and more money is put towards researching our aging bodies, we're finding that we need more like 1.0 to 1.3 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. And so this is sort of the kind of the sweet spot for most people is that 30 grams of protein 3 times a day. So you don't have to sit down and do any major calculations. This is a real easy way to approach this, maintaining your muscles. So let's look at plant source proteins too, because they're really important, and they're a great place. There probably are vegetarians on this webinar today. And I also eat a lot of vegetarian food. It's really great. The caveat to that is that some of our proteins from plant source proteins can be harder to digest, or like we're not as efficient at digesting all of the protein that's in it. So it can end up being that we need a larger volume of food to be able to get all of that in. And so I will point out that if you are experiencing loss of appetite or having a hard time getting larger amounts of food in, then if you can consider including animal source protein, that might make this recommendation that I'm talking about today easier. But we can definitely get everything we need from plant source protein. So even if you look here, the 1 cup of the pea protein milk, those are yellow peas, it's made from yellow peas, has 8 grams of protein in it, and that's the same as a cow's milk. So there are a lot of great sources of protein in vegetarian sources. So I don't want to steer you away from that. And I think it's good to include that in sort of more of an omnivore type diet. But if you're vegetarian, you can definitely make this happen. Here's just sort of a quick cheat sheet to look at a couple of other options that we would have. And I just want to highlight some of the foods that we don't think of as having a lot of protein in them, and why they can be sort of those additions that help to kind of put you up right towards that 30 grams. And that can be really, really helpful, especially for somebody that doesn't have a large appetite. How do I make that meal so that I'm going to get all of that protein in, but I'm still getting fruits, vegetables, whole grains? How am I getting all of the nutrients that I need and not just be thinking about getting protein in? So the easiest ones, the simple ones I started with, are on the top left here, where we're just looking at the animal sources and the vegetarian sources of a lot of protein in like per gram of food. Excuse me, but there's small amounts of protein in things like vegetables. There are 2 to 3 grams in most half cup cooked or 1 cup raw vegetable. Starchy vegetables, there's also 1 to 3 grams of protein in that, like a sweet potato, winter squashes. It's winter squash season, everybody. And then also grains, 1 slice of like a nice grainy bread. Of course, it wouldn't be a good presentation without showing you my seedy bread. And so one or 2 slices of this is going to give you 5 to 10 grams of protein. And then also pasta, rice, and grains. Yes, they do have carbohydrates. Yes, we need to be thoughtful about how much of our diet comes from carbohydrate, but with a well-balanced meal, you can definitely enjoy pasta, grains, and such, as long as you're having a well-balanced meal where you're having vegetables present and a really good source of protein. Here is an example of a meal plan that I made that can give you that 30 grams of protein 3 times a day. I'm going to try to zoom in here a little bit just to show you It doesn't have to be fancy, and it doesn't have to be super inconvenient. If you like cooking, awesome. There's tons of things to do. If you dislike cooking, or there's any reason that you're not able to cook things, that we can still make this happen. So the first 2 days we're doing like a Greek parfait, Greek yogurt parfait type thing, an easy turkey sandwich with cheese, and then spiced pork with brown rice, Brussels sprouts, and almonds. Okay, so that one definitely takes more cooking, but you could also purchase it somewhere. And then some snacks like hummus, some nuts and fruit, those types of things. And then I've got kind of a maybe a more typical type of breakfast here with some scrambled eggs and some turkey sausage and raspberries. This is not a meal plan of restriction. This is not a meal plan where I would want you to feel like you're hungry if you're following it. The nice thing about protein is it's very satiating. And so by just increasing the protein a little bit, or kind of switching out the way that you're having it throughout the day, can really make a big impact on your day. It can make an impact on the way that your energy feels throughout the day. It can make an impact on your blood sugars in a positive way. And it can be very satiating and just give you the energy and the focus that you need to be thinking about the things that are important to you, and not overly thinking about food. And because we don't need that. We don't need to drain ourselves thinking about food. And it's hard because it's such an important thing that has to happen every day. And sometimes that can kind of take its toll energy wise. So I do want to talk a little bit about research highlights. So one of the more recent kind of sports trials that was done that looked at this combination of what is that effect, the synergistic effect of eating protein and combining that with strength training on muscle strength. And they concluded that the concurrent use of resistance training is essential for protein supplementation to improve muscle strength. Now, never will one study be the end all be all. It's just another piece of information to add to our thoughts about nutrition, and just to see if we continue to see well-run studies that come out and support this, then I will be pleased, because I do think this is the right direction, and I think that there's a lot of great research that continues to support this combination. It's just so important. And this is just the graphs from that particular study. On the left, you see total protein intake plus strength training. And so that combination compared to the graph on the right, which is just the protein intake, without any resistance training, you see it's a grand difference of how much that resistance training really impacts the strength that you have. So the combination is truly key, as much as you're able to do that and incorporate resistance training into your day-to-day life. And while you're getting so strong, it is true that you can hit a plateau. So if you're training, you hit a plateau, you can't seem to get any stronger, you can look at your diet, see, am I actually getting enough protein, enough calories? You may be overdoing your exercise. So maybe you're getting real excited about starting resistance training, and you might be going real hard, real fast. And without any rest in between, then our tissues can't repair and heal and continue to grow. And so those are some of the typical things that can happen with a strength plateau, and why we want to avoid that. But it can often be due to restricting food, not getting enough nutrition in. This is a picture of my lovely mother doing Vivo. She probably would kill me if she knows I use this all the time, but she's so good at doing Vivo. She really has increased her strength. She lives in Montana with my dad, and they go hiking all the time, and I'm really proud of them. They've been doing Vivo for like 3 years now, and they're a lot stronger than they were, and they were strong people anyway. So I just want you to know that that there are really, like, it's not all Vivo. Like, you can do lots of different strength training choices out there, and I'm not here to sell you Vivo, but it's a good, convenient way to get some strength training in if you want to. And to avoid those strength plateaus, you want to make sure that you're continually challenging your body, doing different types of exercises. We definitely build that into Vivo, by the way, making sure that you're getting rest and sleep and you're keeping your hydration up and you're not overdoing the nutrition or way underdoing the nutrition. So those are my thoughts on strength plateaus. And then I want to step back and just acknowledge that for those of us who can't cook all the time, don't want to cook all the time, can't seem to get that protein in because maybe your appetite is just not there and you can't get that much food in, even with the lean animal protein, there are supplementation routes that you can take. Now, the caveat here is that a lot of supplements do not contain what they say that they're going to. They're not very well regulated. So luckily there are groups like consumer labs, so kind of third-party lab testing that happens, and they'll do usually a yearly kind of roundup on the different types of protein that you could get, and show and state what protein powders have what they say they have in them, and the quality of them, or if there are any concerns like heavy metals or something else in them. So I really like consumer labs a lot. I also like these dietitians that, I'm sorry, I can't see because of the way that the chat box is on top of it, but this dietitian website is also very good and they do a yearly check. And so these were some of the winners that when I looked through what was tested and how well things performed. And they're also looking at price point here. So these are sort of like all of the different things where it's like, this is a good quality product. This is something that seems to be what they're advertising, but it's also not going to totally break the bank. I like to point out the Orgain whey because so that's just one that's very common and easy to find. You can often find it even like at places like Costco. But there's tons of products out there. So I just recommend you try to find a third-party source that to verify what's actually in it if you're going to go for supplementing. These supplements, protein powder supplements, are very bioavailable. They're very easy for our body to absorb this protein, especially if we're looking at vegetarian sources of protein. So the last one were the last four were the whey protein or dairy sourced, and these are all non-dairy protein sources that scored very well in these reviews. And so I can provide these for you if we need a list afterwards if people are interested, but I definitely recommend looking at annually looking at your products that you use just to see if there are any concerns about them, because even last year, this one Orgain, they had one product that came out that accidentally had sesame in it and they had to do a recall. And so, great, it's not lead, but still, we want to be careful about supplements that we're putting in our body. It's definitely a serious thing. It's something important to do. So that's the biggest drawback, is that sometimes it's not that good. We always say food first, as dietitians, but that's also being respectful to your abilities and your interests in how you're going to be feeding yourself. How much energy do you want to put towards your food? And so this can be an option for people that want to include a supplement. This can also be a really easy way to get in 30 grams of protein right after you do resistance training, when we tend to be, there's what we call an anabolic window, when we're a little bit more able to build muscle effectively. And so though that's probably a longer window than we used to hear, it was always 30 minutes is the anabolic window. And after that, you're not going to be building as much muscle as you do in that first 30 minutes. But it seems like that window is actually longer. So don't feel like you have to chug 30 grams of protein after you do an extra bout of exercise right away. Just somewhat within an hour or two afterwards, if you can get either a meal or a protein supplement in, that's what I recommend doing. Okay, so last thing about weight and why I don't talk about it a lot. So there's lots of risks to dieting, which probably many of you know, which include developing eating disorders, having disordered eating, which can really impact your mental health and really hurt your body. So I really recommend trying to push towards what can I eat, what are the things that are going to help me feel good? And that includes including, fun foods that aren't just about getting your nutrition in. And I firmly believe that. And so there are benefits to being sort of a weight neutral approach, of not trying to be losing weight just for weight loss sake. It can improve sense of self-worth, and clinical evidence has improved that people have improved metabolic functions. So basically, if you're moving your body and you're feeding yourself, a varied diet that is thoughtful and healthy, and you're thinking about what you're putting in your body, but you're not obsessing over it and not over limiting your foods, we tend to see better health outcomes with that. And you get to enjoy food, which is always good. Your take-home points for today. Food, we want to evenly distribute protein throughout the day. 25 to 30 grams of protein 3 to 4 times. So each meal, if you're only doing 1 meal a day, see if you can get up to 2. We don't need to be perfect. That's not realistic. So figure out what is going to help you in your body. Try it out for a month and see, if I eat 30 grams of protein 3 times a day, or even 2 times a day for a month, what do I feel any different in any way? Is this helping me? Do I feel like it's helping me? Is it worth my energy to be thinking about that? Exercise resistance training 2 to 3 times a week. That's just sort of a standard recommendation, and also including aerobic exercise, because it is still very important for your cardiovascular system to make sure that you're not just moving heavy things around, you're also breathing and working on your cardiovascular strength. And then lastly, strength plateaus. We want to avoid them. We can do that by nourishing ourselves and resting, in addition to the exercise that we do that's so important, and trying as you can to reduce stress, which I know is hard to do, but that is what I got for you. So we definitely have time for questions, and I want to thank you again for having me. I'll unshare so that I can see Katie.
Perfect. Thank you, Jamie. That was really awesome. It's always a nice reminder, and it can feel a little overwhelming. So I appreciate that you break it up that way. Okay, so this question: can daily substantial exercise reduce muscle loss? And I think I'm a little confused by the next part. It looks like they're saying, between 0 to 5% per decade, but maybe just the first part: can daily substantial exercise reduce muscle loss?
No, yeah, I totally get what they're saying. Yes, it can. And so that's probably coming from those earlier graphs of like, we're typically losing 0 to 5% of muscle mass per decade. And then it starts to escalate as we get older into our later decades. So you can definitely mitigate that, depending on sort of all of those pieces of like genetics and your health and how much you're able to do this. In a vacuum with a typical body that is able to respond well to exercise. Yes, you can mitigate it, you can overcome it, very much so. I think that's really exciting.
Yeah, it definitely is. And
Yeah.
I'm glad more people are talking about it. I think for a while, folks were not. So this next question, I think you answered at the end. So we're just confirming 25 to 30 grams per meal.
Yes.
And 25 is still enough, they're asking.
Yeah. It's not, it's with anything with nutrition, there's a range, and I think that people are going to respond at different levels, but that's around the level. And I also include that 25. I'm seeing more recommendations like that, but because of my own work that I've done with people one-on-one, if you are in a smaller stature body, it can be hard to get in 30 grams of protein at each meal. I've worked with a lot of shorter folks that just can't do that, and it's just not comfortable, and that can dissuade you from trying to do any of this at all. So trying to hit that, getting close in the range, even 20 to 30, just get get a chunk of protein. But the actual clinical trial suggests that 30 grams is more that kind of light switch, but at the same time, nothing is definitive. And I think if you get close, then you're going to be really helping your body out.
Someone's asking about the slides, if they're available to print out, or I think they asked that question when you had the meal plan listed.
Oh yeah.
There's somewhere we can find that.
Yeah, I can provide that to you, Katie, if you want to.
Okay. Yeah, that would be great. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, even I'll include a PDF I can give you the slides if you want them, but I'll also include the PDF of the meal plan with some of the recipes that are with it. So, and then also as a PDF, you'll be able to read it, so it's not so tiny.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you. And then I
Yeah.
Googled this next one for you because I thought you might not know. I'll be really impressed if you do, but how much protein is in a cup of almond milk? I looked it up. It looks like it's only 1 gram of
Very
protein.
good. I
Yeah.
didn't know that. It's usually 1 to 2 grams. It's shockingly disappointing. That's why I like to point out that that the pea protein milk is one of the easiest ways to get the like a higher protein dairy alternative. But I see more products coming out that are a combination. I think that the milk alternative industry is aware that that's a problem. And so think of something like almond milk as a beverage. It's great. If you like it, it's really good. Some of them have added sugar. That's not the best for you, but but it can be something that you still enjoy, but it's not going to be a good protein source.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Do protein drinks work as part of a daily diet like Boost or Ensure?
Yeah, that can definitely. I have clients that's their kind of go-to. They actually keep Ensure like even in their car sometimes, just in case they're going to miss a meal and they know they're going to miss it. So you always kind of want to be ready. So those can work. And then other shelf-stable options that would be a little different than that would be something like pure protein. I know I see that in a lot of places. That's a whey protein shake, but it's shelf-stable and really easy to drink. And the price point is pretty decent too.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Is whey gluten-free?
Yes, because whey is derived from dairy milk.
Hmm.
So you still have to look at the product, whatever you're buying, to make sure that that says that it's gluten-free on that product. But whey itself is just dairy, and so there's no gluten in it because there's no grain growing like within the cow tissues, right? I'm not trying to be silly about that.
Yeah,
I just
no.
want to be clear.
By the way, everyone, really great questions. Keep them coming. Okay, can you have 30 grams of protein at each meal and still lose weight?
Yes, because I worked on weight loss studies, and we used this that 30 grams as our kind of marker. And we did weight loss studies where we did our control were people that were having the 0.8 grams of protein. So that's more like, I don't know, 10 or 15 grams per meal. And then we had our intervention group that was getting more. Both groups are trying to lose weight. Both groups lost weight, but the group that's having more protein is more satiated and tend to build more muscle. So
right. Yeah. Instead of fat. Yeah. That's super
yeah.
interesting.
And let me just point out that they're also one of the biggest fears we have, or one of the biggest risks of weight loss, especially when we're older, is losing your muscle mass. And so we're also able to see that people maintain their muscle mass more if they're trying to lose weight and they do a little bit higher protein.
Next question is, how does dieting increase the risk of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease? That was on one of the slides there.
Oh yeah. So the going theory is that restriction can actually impose and kind of exacerbate non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And I think it's just I think it has a lot to do with the way that if we're overly restricting food, usually the pendulum swings. There's a cycle where we end up eating a lot of some things that maybe are very fatty and sugary that can kind of inflame the liver and make the non-alcoholic fatty liver disease worse. So restriction seems to be kind of a recipe for making it worse. Whereas if you can find sort of a balanced diet or a good dietitian that could work with you on this, where you're not trying to restrict, but you're trying to really balance your diet and get a lot of good healthy stuff in, that can be a much better way to improve non-alcoholic fatty liver disease numbers.
Someone's asking if you can recommend any ready-to-drink protein shakes.
Yeah. Premier Protein, Muscle Milk, Orgain makes a shelf-stable product too. And then, Fairlife milk is another one that's really good.
Yeah.
All of those are shelf-stable, and most of them are somewhat tasty. I think they're most tasty if you make them very cold. But so, do some taste tests and see what what fits you, what you like.
I feel like I already know the answer to this, and it's going to make a lot of people, including myself, sad. Do beer or wine have any worthwhile protein?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
One of our members here is asking if there's relevant exercises on our site. Yes, there is. If you go to Vigor, you'll see we break them down by the dimensions of wellness, and you can put physical wellness. We have some strength exercises there for you to check out as well. And like I said, Vivo is going to offer 3 free classes to us to try. If you decide you like it, they're actually offering 50% off for our members. So, but you can feel free to just try the 3 or 1 or 2. And that'll be coming up in December.
That's a good discount.
Yeah, it's a pretty good discount, right?
I remember my mother is a very frugal person. And when she first started Vivo, she was telling me she didn't think that, she was worried that it wasn't really worth the money, even though she felt like she was getting stronger. The cool thing is we do a physical assessment in the beginning, and then 8 weeks later, we do another one. So you can actually see what kind of progress you're making and what areas you might want to work on more. And after she did that reassessment, it's like she never looked back.
Yeah.
So,
good for her. I'm glad she likes it.
Yeah.
This person says, I've been aiming for 1 gram of protein per kilogram of body weight and finding that hard to do without gaining weight. I appreciate that question because I don't know if you've heard of Gabrielle Lyon. She's kind of making the rounds on a lot of podcasts right now. She's a physician. She wrote a book called Forever Strong, I believe.
Okay.
And she says that same thing about 1 gram per your ideal body weight. And I just think that's insane. That's a lot of protein.
Well, first of all, the interesting thing about that is that ideal body weight has been debunked, and we don't use that clinically, medically.
Yeah.
It's not actually a measurement that's helpful, because it's sort of like you have to nourish the body that you have, that you're carrying around. You can't just say, well, I'm going to nourish the part that I ideally would be, because then you're going to undernourish your body. You just will. So I know for a fact that people can lose weight doing the little bit higher protein, and it can be more difficult for certain bodies. And I think that's when you want to get the help of a really good dietitian that can look at your individual needs, which, there's recommendations, and then there's our individual needs. And so you have to take those recommendations and figure out how can they be adjusted to fit you the best that they can be. But I've certainly seen it over and over again. This is definitely doable, and it's going to support. There's some that would say it will support the most important thing is to support that muscle mass, and not the most important thing is to lose that weight. So that's a kind of controversial thing to say. But something to consider, and maybe, I don't know, have an argument with me about. I'd love to talk to anyone wants to talk to me later.
We'll save that for another day. We'll have another, if anyone wants to come argue with Jamie.
All right, great.
So we've got a really nice compliment here, which I agree with. Somebody says, or Carol says, this is the best dietary exercise talk for seniors I've ever heard. Thank you. So
Wow, thanks.
And then as a reminder, someone else is asking about Ensure. Yes, Jamie said Ensure, Boost, those are fine. She said Premier Protein is a good one. Fairlife is a good one.
Yeah.
Somebody here is asking about quinoa as a source of protein, and also chickpea pasta.
Ooh, yes. Chickpea pasta is really handy. I enjoy it. I think most people, some people don't love the texture, but I think it's more like typical pasta than a lot of other pasta substitutes. And you've got this big boost of protein in it, and you have extra fiber. I think so. It's a pretty cool product. So I really like chickpea pasta. And then quinoa is like, you still want to think of it more as a grain, because the majority of the calories that are coming from it are still carbohydrates. So there's good energy coming from it, and it has a little more protein than say rice, but you're not going to sit down and eat 30 grams of protein with just a bowl of quinoa. You're going to have to put that together with maybe some tofu or tempeh or lentils or something like that. Yeah.
Someone's asking about protein in peas. If your thought on that, is it?
I'm into it.
Okay. Yeah, like the pea protein, and I've seen that.
Yeah, because the amino acid profile is pretty good. I like that it's coming from that source. Legumes are great overall. Any way that you can kind of include beans and and peas in your diet, I think is a good thing to do.
Right. I see somebody here asking, why isn't my question being read? We're working our way down, but we only have 2 minutes left, so we're getting to as many as we can. Would you be able, Jamie, to put your, I don't know if you have access to the chat, oh yeah, you should, your email in there. People are interested in your email. So you'll be able to find that there, everyone. I think Jamie has a pretty easy email too, which is nice. And while you're typing that, Jamie, somebody's wondering, non-Greek yogurt, does it have as much protein per cup as Greek yogurt?
Non-fat?
They wrote non-Greek.
Oh, non-Greek. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. No. So the only reason is because Greek yogurt is basically runny yogurt that we've strained all that liquid out of. So you end up with just like a condensed version. You have more protein per gram. If you like runny yogurt, you can definitely start with that and build onto it. Like I was talking about, adding things onto it.
Okay, perfect. And somebody's asking, how do I add protein to my diet without gaining weight? I think Jamie spoke on that a little bit about, especially with the strength training. And she's asking again, is 1 gram protein per kilogram body weight sufficient? I think we answered those.
It could be, but 1.2 is the kind of the basis of the research that I participated in. So anywhere between 1.0 and 1.2, I think is like kind of, it's a good sweet spot there.
Okay. Somebody's asking, what is Vivo? If you want to give us a little bit about that.
Sure. So Vivo is kind of an innovative resistance training program for focused on adults that are over 60. But I tell you what, every time I do Vivo, I get a really great workout. It makes me super happy too. But it's all online, it's virtual. They're 45-minute classes, but we've put a lot of thought into that program so that each week kind of it builds and then it comes down, so that we're periodizing, we're challenging all of our muscle groups, but then we're making sure that you're also getting the rest and that and the healing that the muscles need in between. So it's not just the classes. There's a lot of thought about how the exercises are played out week to week. And then also in each class we do cognitive exercises, which are actually just like fun little games where people end up sharing cool details about their lives. But we do it with like kind of playing games, and you're doing that while you're doing the exercise, and that can be really stimulating for the brain.
Yeah, I agree. We got to try a class and we all really enjoyed it, the care coordinators. Okay, let's finish up with one more question here. Can there be too much protein in a meal related to kidney function?
Yeah, that used to be the kind of the going thought. We've realized that yes, you could really overdo it if you, let's say you were just eating like a carnivore diet, you were only eating protein. It's hard to impact, like you have to talk to your own doctor about this, but at the same time, overall, we're seeing evidence where it's not as much of a risk as we used to think it was. So you can, and also this, the 1.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight is not an excessive, it's not even close to say like a keto diet or anything like that. It's just barely elevated above the current recommendation.
Right. Okay, great. Well, we really appreciate it, Jamie. It was just, I can tell how passionate you are. It was really fun to learn from you. I think the slides are great. Everybody, this was recorded, so you will be able to access this in about 48 to 72 hours. Come join us to try Vivo if you'd like next month. You'll get an invitation for that. And thank you again, Jamie. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's really been a pleasure. Take care, everybody.
Goodbye.